how to get the banks to throw more money at you. Now, people think that you've got to make a massive income, and that's the only way you're going to be able to, increase your borrowing capacity to keep yourself borrowing and borrowing so you don't hit a surface. Now, this is a misconception. If you understand the game of finance, understand, yields, cash flow, understand, your equity position, understand your personal finance, debt to income ratios. These are things that are vital to understand so you don't get stuck. Now, eventually, there's going to be a time where you might get stuck or you might hit a wall and they say, oh, listen, you can't get a loan anymore. But you may go down a low doc route, which is going with a low documentation finance route, where the interest rate might be a little bit more expensive, or a little bit higher than your standard, full doc loan. And as well, you might have to put a larger deposit, which might have to be a 20% deposit. But if you've got the funds there and you've got the equity in your properties, it makes sense to take that opportunity, because if you do your numbers right and you're making sure that you're not over leveraging yourself in a bad way where it's bad debt, this can help you, keep moving forward. But let's talk about some tips. These are going to be 5 impactful tips that are going to help you increase your borrowing capacity to make sure the banks are throwing money at you every single time you're wanting to invest in property. So let's start with it. The very first one is purchasing positive geared investment properties. Now, it all comes down to what that property is positive geared by. So if it's a 5% yield, it's returning. Now, of course, they're going to fact check that property, and what they do, they're going to stress test it. They're going to wipe off 20% of the income of what your rent is. So let's say you're getting $100 a week on your investment property, they're going to scrap 20% of that. So it's going to be, they're going to take it at 80%. So it's going to be $80 a week. They're going to stress test the, of course, the interest rate of what you're getting. So if you're getting a 3% interest rate, they're going to take it to a 5, 6, or 7, depending on which lenders. So they're going to stress test that, and they're going to see, how's that property going to service up for your personal situation with your income, debt to income ratio, and are you going to be able to afford to hold that property? Now, there's a lot to it, and I can talk about this for hours. Now, what you got to understand is the yield is very important in your portfolio. Why? Let's just say the property is yielding gross 5%. So what I mean gross is the rental income is 5% gross of what it's going to return. Now, if you're at a 5% gross, now let's just say you get another investment property, but it's the exact same value. So the purchase price is the same, but the yield is a 6% gross. Now, what will happen is your borrowing capacity can change up to $100,000 as in increasing for the next purchase. So it's going to help you. Now, so this is why it's super important to make sure you're getting assets that are still cash flow positive in your portfolio, because it increases your borrowing capacity. As soon as you start to get into a negative year, or you start to go below, you get lower and lower with your yield or your return on your cash flow, your borrowing capacity is going to start getting shot, and you're going to get stuck, and you're not going to be able to borrow any more money. So imagine if you got a property that's $300,000, it's yielding at 5%. And then imagine if you got a property at $300,000, but it's yielding at 6%. And then imagine if you got one that was yielding at 7 or 8%, which we've achieved for our clients. That's going to shoot your borrowing capacity up even further. So it helps with your serviceability as well. And what it does is those properties that are yielding even higher, the income will add to your personal income, and that's going to help you increase your borrowing capacity. But you got to make sure you're not getting into you're making sure your debt to income ratio is still, it's not getting, you're not over leveraging yourself in debt, and you're still bringing it a bit moderate. Now, next one, increasing your personal income. Now, this is something you can talk about. If you're someone that was working for someone, you can ask your boss for a pay rise, and they might say yes or no. And there's another thing where you can try and get a second job. Okay, this is going to help you, increase your income. If this is something, if you're really wanting to invest, you haven't got the finance at the moment, or maybe, you're working and you're in the lower spectrum of, your income is, maybe at the average, or it's at $40,000 to say $60,000 in between that price range. Now, that is something where if you say, okay, if I get a second job, it might help contribute to the income, and I might be able to generate another $10,000 or $20,000 a year, or whatever it may be, depending on how hard you want to work. And that's because you've got a goal of what you wanted to do by purchasing your next investment property or your first investment property. So doing that will help your borrowing capacity. Now, keep in mind, if you do get a second job, if you're self-employed working for yourself, you're going to need 2 years of pay slips. But not saying that if you can get that income and it's going to help with you putting down a deposit, and it's going to help with, like I said, as your deposit. But if you work for someone, you're going to have to you're going to be PAYG as a second job. You're going to have to, you're going to go down that route, and it's going to help, and you can use that income straight away. And they're going to look at it depending on how long you're working and how much experience you've been in there as well. They can look at that to say you got 3 months, you've been in that second job, or 6 months. Some banks will look at that and they'll accept that, and they'll increase onto your borrowing capacity as well. I guess number 3 is lowering your liabilities. So if you've got credit card debt, you've got student debt, you've got finance, vehicle finance debt. These are something that if you can wipe those out very quick, it's going to increase your borrowing capacity. Now, if you've got someone that's got a credit card and haven't got any properties at the moment, and you're looking to invest, little sneaky tip: if you can get rid of that credit card, just wipe it off, and then start it back up once you've purchased the property. That will increase your borrowing capacity dramatically. I know from when I had a credit card when I had my first investment property, I got a credit card attached to the offset account, and it was at the $10,000. Okay, so that was my maximum I could spend. As soon my broker said to me, he goes, "What's the lowest you can wipe it down to?" I go, "Okay, $6,000." He goes, "Put it down to 6." Once we done that, I got an extra $80,000 from the bank. So that is something that's a little sneaky tip. If you've got a credit card and you don't want to wipe it off, lower the repayments. So you take it down to the very low. So say you can borrow maximum $6,000 on your credit card, and it's all at 10 or it's at 15, lower, and it's going to increase your borrowing capacity. But as well, if you've got student loan debt, your credit card debt, vehicle debt or finance debt on your vehicles or etc., try and wipe that debt out straight away. That will increase your borrowing capacity dramatically. Okay. Now, that's just something to keep in mind. Okay. Next thing, I guess, tracking your savings and reducing your spending. This is going to help a lot. If you're someone that is spending a lot and you like to enjoy yourself, you like to go out and splurge that money, but you got a goal, you want to buy a property, just try and cut down on those costs. Little sneaky tip: when I first started investing, I got a book and I filled out everything I was spending in a month. Now, you can use your app if if you're with the Commonwealth Bank, they got a very good app. If you're with other banks, you can use the app, or you can do it manually yourself. But why you use a book is because a little notebook, it keeps you accountable, and you actually have to write it physically in, and it actually keeps you aware of what you're doing. And if you're going to buy something like Chewies, chocolates, soft drinks, whatever that may be, energy drinks, whatever it may be, you're writing it down, and it kind of gets you annoying because you're writing these things down and you're buying these little things that are all contributing. In a month, if you're buying, a V a day or a coffee a day and all those sort of things, they add up. So if you can reduce the costs a little bit, it's going to help you save, and it's going to help with your borrowing capacity. If the banks look at your expense or your income sheet from your expense from your debit account or credit card account, they're going to see what you're spending, because they need to know this information. And if you're spending a lot, this is something to take into consideration, to say, I've got to actually, fix this up. As well, if you're living out of home and maybe you want to go back in home so you can save a bit of money, that's something as well you can take in consideration. But this is all tailored to your goals. If you're wanting to invest, these are going to help you, increase your borrowing capacity. Investing in different entities. So for some people, self-employed, you need to, not invest purely sometimes in your own name. You want to be investing in trust as well. But if you're someone, even if you're PAYG, investing into different entities is going to help increasing your borrowing capacity as well, because the property is not in your name. So if you get to a point where you might have 2 or 3 properties in your name, you might say, you know what, I'm getting close to that maximum borrowing capacity. Let's put the next one in a trust, in a different entity. A trust with a company, a bucket company, and that's going to be, the trustee is going to purchase the next investment property. Now, this is all about tax advice and how to, deferring your tax or minimizing your tax and putting properties in different entities. Now, I can't talk purely of what to do, so don't take this as financial advice. I'm not a licensed practice CPA or accountant, but I'm just talking about, because I'm related in property, I've got to trust myself. This is something that you can do once you get to a threshold, or if you've got a very good accountant and broker, they will talk with each other and they'll say, okay, listen, Mr. or Mrs. Investor, you're going to have to go now into a trust that's going to help with your borrowing capacity, increasing your borrowing capacity so you don't get stuck now. And not just that, we want to minimize your tax. Maybe you're hitting a threshold, or maybe we need to, put some protection in for yourself because you've got a job. Maybe you're a lawyer, maybe you're an accountant, something like that. People can get sued especially if you're self-employed. That is something as well. But that's another story for another day. So these are ways to increase your borrowing capacity. This is how you're going to get the banks to throw more money at you. Now, there's a few more other steps, but I just want to put these 5 here. But number 1 is the most important when it comes to investing. Like I said, purchasing positive geared properties, because these properties are going to increase your borrowing capacity, and it's understanding debt to income ratio. I'll talk a lot more about the finance side of things when it comes to debt to income ratio, understanding not over leveraging yourself, understanding about yield, and I guess what that can do for you with a borrowing capacity perspective. Now, that's another topic in itself, but use these examples, these five tips here that I've given you. If you're someone that wants to invest in property, you're savvy, you want to, increase your borrowing capacity, you want to keep getting the banks to throw you money every single time, these are the most impactful tips that we look at and that we say to our clients that come to us, or even people that are looking to purchase property. I say to them, use these first 5 tips, because this is where you want to start, understanding this. Once you've understand these fundamentals, it becomes you get a lot of clarity. You've increased your financial IQ. Then you can say, okay, this makes sense. Now I've got to be I have to be a bit wise of what I'm doing with my finances, because I want to hit a certain goal. So hopefully you got something from this. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, share this video with other people. This will mean the world to us. We're just trying to help and educate people more when it comes to property investing, and just how to achieve, so they can achieve their financial goals. Thank you for watching this video.